When millennials invented the girl boss, Gen Z responded with the trad wife, with their homemade Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereals and BMIs of 18 after popping out a half dozen kids. It makes them easy to hate.
Welcome to the Ballerina Farm Kitchen.
Today my toddlers wanted cereal for breakfast again, so I decided to make some Cinnamon Toast Crunch since that's my husband's favorite cereal.
Typically conservative and Christian, these women have traditional marriages, embracing the idea that it's okay for a woman to stay home, take care of her kids, and tend to the hearth. It's a mindset, a lifestyle, but also an aesthetic that traffics in 1950s nostalgia.
I was so proud of my man going out to earn a living for us. And Pete was so proud of me.
When my husband turned to me and said he was craving Hamburger Helper, I had no clue what he was talking about. But after he explained it to me, I knew exactly what to do.
Trad wives are also magnets for hate and judgment.
Trad wife, I guess it's a Gen Z thing.
I'm sorry, 50 years ago was not a place I ever want to be back.
Exactly.
I do not give a about the trad wives. This kind of stuff is just a flex, okay? That's what this is. All this is doing is just flexing.
The critiques aren't totally wrong. Trad wives are sometimes performative, a made-for-social media phenomenon that can look a little ridiculous. The most successful ones are the most extreme, curated and out of touch. The more modest ones, who traffic in budgeting tips and recipes, garner smaller followings and less fame. But this cultural movement warrants celebration, not contempt. Trad wives don't want domestic servitude. They want the roles of wife, mother, and homemaker to count as respectable options for the 21st century women. Trad wives are feminists too. The cultural stigma around being a homemaker traces back to the 1963 book, The Feminine Mystique, by Betty Friedan, which launched the second-wave feminist movement. Women were told to pursue no greater destiny than to glory in their own femininity, she wrote. They had been taught to pity the neurotic, unfeminine, unhappy women who wanted to be poets or physicists or presidents. She compared deluded housewives to people marching into concentration camps, suffering a slow death of mind and spirit. She disparaged women who baked their own bread, sewed their own and their children's clothes, kept their new washing machines and dryers running all day. The women's liberation movement succeeded in giving women more choices, but it also sparked a cultural backlash that limited them. Friedan was worried about women being stuck at home. Now, 55% of moms with kids at home work full-time, and many women work more hours than they say they want. Friedan was worried about our birth rate overtaking India's, yet America's fertility rate is now in free fall.
In one cohort, neo-traditionalism is going to feel like a LARP to some extent, no matter what you do.
Ross Douthat, who's a New York Times columnist, worries that the digital age is one of extinction, in which many of our traditions and values get killed off, but that survival depends on intentionality and intensity.
True traditionalism doesn't make it. And you see this, again, in cultures that have sort of, that are still traditional and have sort of tried to put up bulwarks against the modern world, right? Like Islam in the Islamic Republic of Iran is not doing that well. Catholicism in Poland is not doing that well, right? So you have to have some kind of reinvention of the traditional that belongs fully and accepts that it belongs fully to the 21st century.
Trad wives are taking part in the process of reinvention that Douthat alludes to. They're deliberately retro, evoking an earlier era they believe was too thoughtlessly discarded. But they aren't trapped at home, barefoot and pregnant. Many help support their families with part-time jobs, while also running their households and raising their children. They embrace social media to bring about a revival of the domestic sphere. They engage in just a little bit of performance to make the point clear. Of course, being forced onto the housewife track was stifling for some women. Today's trad wives don't talk much about that, and have a certain showiness to them that rubs people the wrong way.
So a lot of people ask, do I really make everything from scratch for every meal every day?
Hannah Nealman, also known as Ballerina Farm, is the most famous trad wife. She's a Mormon mother of 8 who lives on a farm in Utah. But her husband is the heir to an airline fortune, and Nealman is frequently criticized for how she's really just a performer, not actually living out the homesteading lifestyle that she claims. In a sense, she's following in the tradition of Martha Stewart, who calls herself, quote, the original fucking trad wife, who ushered in an era of lavish homemaking in the 80s and 90s, which was all about spectacle. But other tradwives truly follow in the footsteps of the 50s housewives who cared about thrift and traded budget tips for how to get by, shaped by their memories of wartime rationing.
We had very little, and we took the whole paycheck out in cash, and we put it in the cash envelope, so I knew I could not go over this gas amount. I could not go over this grocery amount.
Consider Shay Elliott and Angela Reed, who run the podcast Homemaker Chic.
You need to control your money or your money controls you. It doesn't matter if you have $5 or $5 million.
These homemakers are reacting to a world in which it's hard to scrape by on just one income, in which childcare options have grown more costly, in which the expectations placed on parents have really ballooned out of control. Tradwife culture is a corrective for a world in which staying at home with small kids can be alienating, since fewer mothers make this choice than in decades past. There's a lot less built-in community. When children get older, parents and kids find that hostile design and stupid rules govern their neighborhoods and cities, making it really hard for parents to give kids the independence they seek. This is made even harder when you don't know your neighbors. Today's intensive parenting culture expects so much oversight and involvement. The many moms who have entered the labor force are somehow still expected to spend a ton of time actively parenting.
Labor force participation of women has gone up, but actually parenting time has also gone up, and that's at the expense of leisure time, more or less, and to some extent at the expense of housework time.
Emily Oster is a Brown University economist who studies parenting.
My parents were never there. It was like 1980, not in like a bad way. It's just like I came home and then after dinner we were like outside, whatever, we watched some TV, we tried to do our homework. This thing of like, I'm going to spend my afternoon driving my kid to the like 4 different soccer tournaments and, supervising this and that. I think that is really different in terms of like how people's time is being used.
Tradwives are rebelling against this dominant parenting culture. They're more likely to choose homeschooling, to have a lot of kids, and to be involved in church communities. They don't necessarily look down on women in the workforce. Many of them embrace the side hustle. They just made a different set of choices. The rise of the tradwife also speaks to something deeper, a common lamentation about the decline of the village, a sense that we've lost the built-in support systems that made parenthood and homemaking fun and pleasant and social. The fact that women are doing so much more paid work has predictably led them to spend much less time on unpaid work, such as organizing church dinners or potlucks or other community events for the very young and very old. The lawyer turned writer and homeschooler Ivana Greco has pointed out that while we recognize the value that homemakers brought to the working world when they left the home, we haven't fully internalized what we lost. What's vanished are the community networks that wove us together. Tradwives know that building and maintaining a sense of community is hard work. If you want a village, writes the feminist critic Louise Perry, you have to be willing to act as villager. That means accepting and embracing your obligations to others, even when it feels like an infringement on your independence. In our rush to free ourselves of obligations and commitments to become fully self-actualized, Friedan style, we forgot how much dependence so many stages of life entail. Tending to the hearth and building tighter social bonds are not dumb or performative acts. The world portrayed by the tradwives is an aspirational one, not because of the outward trappings, the beautiful mothers, well-dressed children, $30,000 Aga stoves, freshly baked bread, but because it showcases truly meaningful things that are worth bringing back into fashion. Friedan denigrated these pleasures, critiquing the mystique of feminine fulfillment, defined by pretty pictures of the American suburban housewife kissing their husbands goodbye in front of the picture window, depositing their station wagons full of children at school. She and the third-wave feminists who followed her failed to recognize that some women really did feel fulfilled by this lifestyle. They underestimated how many communities were brought closer together by the unpaid work done by these homemakers. The tradwives have brought us full circle, restoring glamour to a lifestyle that the women's liberation movement belittled.